I'm Julie Sullivan, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to this First Friday Luncheon. I want to begin, of course, by thanking our platinum sponsor, Minnesota Bank and Trust, and our gold sponsor, the Executive Education Programs and our Opus College of Business. And I want to especially recognize all of you and the positive impact that you are making on St. Thomas. Many of you in this room are supporting our students with your gifts, with your time, with your mentoring, with your advice. Sometimes they're your children that you're sharing with us, but many of you are supporting our students. And I want to thank you so much. There's nothing more important for us than supporting our students. Many of you are giving gifts that support scholarships. Many of you gave from your hearts to help us have such a successful Tommy Give Day, and all of those proceeds went to scholarships. And as you know, we've recently announced a $200 million campaign solely focused on scholarships. Our goal is to double the endowment that we have that's focused on student support. Our aim is to reduce student debt and to ensure that every qualified person who wants to come to St. Thomas and have the benefit of this fabulous St. Thomas education and the Tommy Network for Life has the access to do so. So thank you for helping us do it. And now I would like to ask Father Larry Snyder, our Vice President for Mission, to lead us in a prayer.
Good afternoon, and let us join in prayer. Good and gracious God, we thank you for your overflowing generosity to us. We give you thanks for the blessings of the food that we eat, and especially for this meal that we will share today. We give thanks for our home and family and friends, and especially for the presence of those who have come together today. We give you thanks for our health, our work, and our play. We ask you to be with those who are hungry, alone, sick, or suffering. Open our hearts to share your love with all those we meet, and we ask your blessing through Christ your Son. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and enjoy your lunch.
Hello again, everyone. Sorry to interrupt your conversations once again. Hope you've enjoyed your lunch today. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Ozzie Nelson. Ozzie is joined here today by his wife, Shannon. Ozzie and Shannon are both alumni of the University of St. Thomas, both graduated in the class of 1987. How many other class of 1987s do we have here today? All right, I know a few. I heard several who knew each other, so thank you for joining us. Ozzie and Shannon actually met here at St. Thomas, I think very early on in your time here, and thank you, Joe, for introducing them. And Ozzie was class president as a freshman. He also was president of the All-College Council his junior year. Shannon, too, was involved in the All-College Council, or for those of you who were here at that time, the ACC. And she also was Resident Hall Association president. Upon graduation, Ozzie joined his father's 15-person interior design firm, and he worked his way to CEO by 2003. Under Ozzie's direction, the firm expanded from a single office with a traditional design firm focus as their core competency to its current 50-plus locations across the country, serving clients both across the U.S. but also globally, and offering several fully integrated services that you'll hear about today. Nelson, as his firm is called today, has executed more than 40 mergers and acquisitions, taking the company from the rank of number 37 in their industry to top 10, with a growth of more than 500%. So I'm so pleased that Ozzie, with his immense passion and vision, which you will get a sense of today, has recently joined our College of Arts and Sciences Board of Advisors. And now I'd like to ask you to please join me in giving Ozzie a warm welcome. Thank you.
See how this works. Does that work okay? Yeah. I'm gonna roam a little bit. I'm a little bit of more of a roamer. Dr. Sullivan, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. It is a great pleasure to be here. It's been a very reflective week of thinking about this institution and how much it has impacted my life. And it's great. It's just great to be back on the campus and with so many people that I haven't seen in many years. So. The name of my presentation, let's see, how does this work? Or we could just look at me. I don't know about you, I never get tired of it. It gets better, believe me. We're starting with the credits, I think. There we go. Okay. Little sneak preview. We gave you a couple pages ahead and we'll go back. Okay. So, really what I put my time into in terms of this presentation is very kind of all of you to spend 30 minutes here together. And so how do we make this an agenda that really has take-home value for everybody? And not really a story about one company or one person. So I'm going to talk about the power of now. I hope that's mysterious enough that that'll keep your interest for the next couple of slides. It is great to be back here, as I said, on the campus. As Dr. Sullivan said, I was ACC president. And you can see from this picture that was on the front of the Aquin celebrating my presidency that I was also voted the first ACC president most likely not to graduate. In all seriousness, if I was booted out of the institution, it would have been because I've always felt that the student government and students on campuses should not just enjoy the time that they're there, but they have an opportunity to be a moral compass for the institution and for the world. And so we took the year to do a lot of protesting. We felt that students should have observer rights on the Board of Trustees. We felt that as a Catholic institution, our endowment should have nothing to do with apartheid. And it's fair to say that I think one of Monsignor Murphy's most prized moments was when I did graduate. So it's good to know I'm welcome back at the university. So I picked two quotes in the beginning that I think have really guided my life. I love this St. Ignatius quote because I really do believe that life is about pursuing a vision and pursuing a potential with all your heart and soul. And then sometimes things are just not meant to be. And that's God's plan. And so this ability through life to continue to pursue what you believe to be your own destiny, but being spiritually connected enough that you can take direction from a spiritual being, I think is one of the keys to happiness. And then this quote, this idea that when you have an opportunity to do amazing things, I strongly encourage you to invite someone to join you. There's a lot of application for that quote in my life. Probably the earliest application started in freshman orientation here on campus at Murray Hall on the 3rd floor, almost 34 years ago, when I saw this blonde across the room and was immediately drawn to her, and that is my wife Shannon. We would date for 3 years. We would be married in the chapel here, and you will see a snippet of the roller coaster that our experience together has been. At times it's been hard to get back on the roller coaster, and her love has always been the thing that has motivated me to go on. 5 minutes into my talk, people were already crying. That's what you want to go and tell people. So I thought a lot about how to tell this story, whether I tell you a little bit about what led up to our company, or do I start with what the company is? And so I'm really trying to pack a lot in here. And so I think the most expeditious way is to give you a little snippet of the company that we've been able to build. So today, we are a $200 million company with 26 offices around the country. That does not include a number of field offices, which is the number that Dr. Sullivan referenced. We're 1,100 people, or over 1,100 people, and we do about 8,500 projects around the world. And this is who we service. I think one of the things that I'm really proud of is the company that so many people beyond me have built is a company that deals with the very best customers in all categories. And I'll give you a snippet of what we do. So this is the American Girl showroom in Rockefeller Center in New York. Our company not only worked to design this center, but really started way upstream to look at how girls have changed in the last decade and what life is like for a girl today, and how do we rebuild the doll, rebuild the brand so it connects with today's girl. We do T-Mobile stores all over the country, including all of their flagships. This is in Times Square. For those of you that are Viking fans, we designed the Viking ship outside of the Viking Stadium. We do a lot of stuff in sports and entertainment. We are the number 3 provider of service to corporate America on the interior side. This is Google's New England headquarters right across from MIT. 3 buildings that nobody really had a use for that we connected by connector bridge to create a 50,000 square foot floor plate. We are topping off a 52-story W Hotel in downtown Philadelphia. We design a lot of retail around the world. Not only here in the U.S. do we work for Saks and Macy's. This is Liverpool, a department store in Mexico City that won Store of the Year a couple of years ago. We are building a robust healthcare practice, and so this is a cancer center, 350,000 square feet in Miami. We've made movement into mixed use in a big way. This is a mixed use facility called The Battery that surrounds the Braves Stadium in Atlanta. It also is the regional headquarters for Comcast. And then one of the pieces of our business that a lot of people probably don't know a lot about, but when you look at high-rise buildings or buildings of all types, there's a go-to designer or architect for those buildings. Many architects, it's sort of a cottage industry, but we feel that it's an opportunity to be a national leader. So we're the national leader in tenant planning. In cities like New York, we are the tenant planner for the Empire State Building, the Lipsticks Building, and the Seagram's Building. Here in Minneapolis, the IDS Towers, as well as 7 other towers. So that's a little bit about what we do. My story is much more about the fact that nobody sat in an ivory tower and decided we were going to go there. That it really has been a series of trying to navigate the environment that we all live in. And that's the piece that I want to focus on, and I'm calling that the power of now. So I think most people think more about the past and the future than they do the current moment. And if you look at these headlines, it conjures up all kinds of images, details, times in your life and in the life of all of us where we go back. I think it's fair to say that the past is a forensic obsession of ours, because we go back and we look at the details and we play the details out in all kinds of ways to see what would have happened or why did things happen. If the past is frozen, the future is murky. And the future can best be described much better by Governor Pawlenty, who was on the stage 4 months ago, and talked about the things that we know are coming in the future. So our cell phone will be the way that we will do blood testing. It'll be the way that we'll take our pulse. There'll be all kinds of health-related things that we'll do with our cell phone. We will do everything from print 3D houses to print human organs, is what we believe. And we also believe that in someday soon, we will zip around like the Jetsons in 2 to 4 people drones. So if that's the past if we've talked about the past, we talked about the future, the power is in now. Because we don't know in the future, while we know those things are coming, we don't know what geopolitical forces will be happening. We don't know what will be happening in the world that will either speed those things up or slow them down or have them happen at the same time. The only thing that we really can control is today. And today, we have more ability to control our lives and to have access to the future, but it comes at us at a record speed, and it changes faster than any other time that humans have ever lived. So I want to talk a little bit about when I graduated from St. Thomas, what some of the factors were in the world at that time. So it was a baby boomer world, very traditional and hierarchical. Baby boomers were in their prime earning years. You have the birth of the PC, which starts to create some interesting opportunities for entrepreneurialism and small-scale applications. Buying patterns were very local and relationship-driven. How many of you that have been around long enough to remember Snyder Drug, First Bank, Norwest? If there was another pharmacy company that came into the Twin Cities whose name we didn't know, we would never go there. And from a geopolitical standpoint, while there's always been a Democrat and Republican Party, there was much more of a bipartisan progress or a cooperation in Washington and around the country. Economic cycles, however, begin in this time to really get pretty volatile. And in 1998, we had our first big dip in the stock market. So what did that mean for me, a 20-something who joined his father's 15-person design firm? I joined the firm because I thought it was an opportunity for scale. About 2 years into it, I realized it was probably the craziest thing that I had ever done. And as I was preparing to figure out what my life's destiny was, our industry started to change in two ways. Number one, corporate portfolios started to grow, and companies really needed to manage these portfolios. And they didn't have effective ways to manage it. So they would try to do it from a mainframe computer, and they would try to allocate space. But as their portfolios got bigger, it was a bigger and bigger challenge. And a couple of 20-somethings and myself developed a way to download the accounting hierarchy that was in these banks, attach it to this new software called AutoCAD, and give these companies a way to allocate their space on an ongoing basis. Sounds pretty basic. It was pretty powerful for them. And the biggest client that we had was a company called Nations Bank. And for those of you that know, Nations Bank went on to become Bank of America. Every story has a dumb luck part to the story, and that's my dumb luck part. So for the next 6 years, 7 years, my life and my business plan was to wait till around Labor Day. And that's because around Labor Day, Bank of America always bought a company. So one year they bought Barnett, another year they bought Fleet. And we'd get a call, and I would lead a team of 50 to 60 people that would go to wherever they bought a bank, and we would put this hierarchy together, and we would help them to understand how they would shed space, and we would get 50 to 60% of the projects that would come out of that. And so it was a really blue ocean strategy where we weren't competing in a traditional manner for design projects, but we were going behind the scenes with a pretty innovative approach. Word got out of what we were doing with Bank of America, and unsolicited, we started doing work for banks all over the country. And then guys like this started showing up, and we knew the party was going to change. And I would say that I would probably still be doing that if the party hadn't changed. It was a great gig, and sometimes, even when we are forced to do things that we don't want to, better things can be around the corner. And this was certainly one of those cases. So this guy represents strategic sourcing. Big corporations now had strategic sourcing people who wanted to get scale. They didn't want to deal with small companies like ours. So this question of where are your dots on the map, is where's your office network, and the number 38 references where we were in the industry at that time. So let me talk a little bit about what I think the environmental factors that were happening that caused the strategic sourcing. From a just across the board, baby boomers were looking to maximize their income before retirement. Technology, we now start to see the internet, making it much easier to connect abstract offices than ever before. Buying patterns, these are unregulated times, as you see under the geopolitical. There's an erosion of hierarchy, and there's just a lot of spending and a lot of speculation. This is also a time from 2002 to 2007, the stock market gains 6,000 points. So this is a time, if there's an opportunity, you reach. And that's what we decided to do. So in a 3.5-year period, and I'd love to have the time to give you the formula. I'll be available afterward if folks have questions. For the sake of simplicity, let's just say we came up with a non-cash formula because the one thing that was key to our strategy is we didn't have cash to approach companies that were in the same position as us. And the value proposition was, we're a $12 million company, you're a $2 million company, we're facing the same challenges. If you have a chance to do something amazing, I highly invite you to bring other people with you. And that began, instead of looking at these or these challenging times as times that embittered us, or we focus on the challenges, every time we have hit challenges, we've become more robust in reaching out to diverse parts of our industry to together do something special. So we did 13 merger acquisitions in 3.5 years, grew the company from 12 million to 53 million. And there's the metrics. And then when you feel like you have all the answers, life happens. And you'll remember this slide, because this is when all the lights went out. This was the Great Recession. And when the lights came back on, it looked like this. And if you were me, it felt like this. Because nobody had enough revenue. And that meant that the people that were your partners yesterday are now your competitors. Business plans were upside down. And from an environmental factor standpoint, baby boomers now want to retire, but they can't because they lost so much of their savings in the recession. The millennials are not necessarily stepping up. They're saying, I want life-work balance. I saw how you worked your whole life, baby boomer. No way. Technology is going from a disruptor to a necessary part of how you do business, which means, and it was changing at record speed, which means you needed scale in order to pay for the technology. Buying patterns are going from the guy in the middle being crushed by either the behemoth or the boutique. And if you're the boutique, you better pray that your niche doesn't change because you're out of business. So there were very few people who wanted to be in the niche. And from a societal change, and this is the part that I think appeals to us as architects and designers, high value for experiences, new urbanism, and an erosion of hierarchy. So people don't just go to the ball game. They go for an experience. And that's why there's the battery. And if you look at all the ways that life is changing, for any part of a business cycle or a business proposition that doesn't work, many times the answer is more experiences. Economic cycles are just highly volatile, hard to predict. Increased globalization means that even if the U.S. economy is going well and Greece isn't, you're going to have problems. And from a geopolitical standpoint, if you remember, I talked about in the 90s, there were Republicans and Democrats, but there was functionality. We now get to this highly partisan divide that's largely happening because of cable TV and the internet, and people can go home every night and reinforce their own point of view. Why that's important is that's what gives birth to George W. Bush, to Barack Obama, to Donald Trump, to who knows what's next. So if you're in any kind of business, the regulations under which you do business can change dramatically with the next administration. So we stepped back. The downturn, I would say philosophically, while it was a terrible time for me and for many entrepreneurs, it was like going to CEO boot camp. I learned more in those 2 years about risk and how to grow a company with much more responsibility, about what my fiduciary responsibility was to our investors and everybody that believed in us. And we took all of these factors to say, if this is the way the world is, and we have this network now of 11 offices, where do we go from here? And at that point, we were still very specialized in corporate interiors. So the decision was, let's double down. We either quit or we double down. So we're going to continue to round out the geographic network. We're going to move into different market verticals. We're not just going to be corporate. We're going to be higher ed. We're going to be tenant planning. We're going to be all the things that I showed you that we are today. And we're going to add new services. We're not just going to be interiors. We're going to be architecture. We're going to be branding. We're going to be engineering. So the first part was to build the network. Again, the constant continued that there wasn't a lot of cash. So we went out to look for the same kinds of partners in geographies to round out our network. And along the way, what we started to see was what honestly I never expected, was this acceleration of the sell-off by the baby boomers. And two companies in particular that really highlighted that opportunity for us was the Mufson Partnership in New York, which would give us 100 people in New York, and a company called Meanandal Cave, which had about 65% of the tenant planning market in Atlanta. Both of these companies driven by sales of these companies driven by baby boomers who saw a window to retire. So we got to a $100 million company. People who have known me over the years know that I always said, if we get to 100 million, I think we're done. And then the opportunities just kept coming. And it was clear that there was an opportunity to create a unique industry leader and to knit together companies that on their own had great value, but as part of a national network could be a very exciting new kind of company. I talked about hierarchy really falling apart in this time. And we refer to ourselves as a 1,200 person startup. We think we are more of a movement than we are a firm. And that allows us to continue to take these steps because through the 1,100 ranks of this company, everybody really believes that we can. So Wakefield Beasley is the company that did the battery and the Comcast Regional Center. And then there came an opportunity with a company that completely filled all of our gaps. It's a company called FRCH, number 3 in the consumer brand and retail space, as well as very strong hospitality. And it would double the size of our company. It would make us top 5 in interiors, and it would position everybody within the company the ability to do all of the things that we had wanted to do all along. And I also got a partner along the way. Remember, you get a chance to do amazing things, take somebody with you. Jim Tipman is my partner. He's in the audience today. Here we are loitering in New York outside of the Flatiron building. One of the things I'm really proud of is I've done almost nothing conventionally in my life. And when it came time to preside over this big company, I decided it was better to have a partner. And I decided that together we thought similarly enough, but differently enough, that we could build this company that would really be very unique. As I said, together today we are leaders in many of the verticals with which we compete. I talked about diversification. Look at where we were in 2015 in terms of our concentration in corporate, and look at 18, we're almost perfectly diversified in all of these different verticals. That's the whole merger story, 40-some mergers, and pretty steady activity to get there. Today I have 2 jobs. One is I'm co-CEOs with Jim running Nelson, and my other job is chairman of the holding company. We have an engineering operating company that's a separate company that I look forward to working with closely to build the same kind of scale that we have with Nelson. Together over the next 5 years, we think we can build a $500 million company. And we think we can be in these spaces in the verticals. So, final part of my talk, and I did actually fairly well. Love this picture, old Wendell Anderson and the Minnesota Miracle. And this is just about the time that I came to Minnesota. And, people often ask me, why did we move to Minnesota? And one is, I don't think Shannon and I could think of another place that we would want to raise our kids. And I often describe that while so many major metropolitan areas are very divided in big wealth and big poverty, Minnesota always had such a big middle. And it's one of the things that has just, that fed the good times and the Minnesota Miracle. I have seen, the same way I have seen the university become more diverse, reach out, just embrace this new world in a way that I couldn't have imagined 30 years ago. Unfortunately, I think life in the Twin Cities and life in Minnesota, and I'll use this 2-minute opportunity to give you something to think about, we have let the partisan divide come into our community and our state, and it doesn't serve us well. We've gone from welcoming innovative companies, and that's why we have more corporate headquarters here than anywhere else, to creating a non-friendly business environment where we tax them to death and give them every reason to leave the state. We do the same thing with wealthy individuals who have been the philanthropy lifeblood of this community. And before you think this is a right-wing message, we have a school district in Minneapolis that costs $24,000 a year to educate a student, and we have a graduation rate of 66%. And the best we can promise our kids in impoverished communities is that we keep them safe enough to go to a school that will underperform. And the worst is that we can't even keep them safe behind their own locked doors from stray bullets from gangs that roam the community. We can do better, and we must do better. And the key to doing better is this. We have to stop isolating. We have to stop the partisan divide from ruining the golden goose that is this place. Last slide. I heard it said that the best time to plant a beautiful shade tree was 30 years ago. And if you missed that opportunity, the second best time is today. I invite everybody here to really look at how we live our lives, to find ways to get more involved in whether it's the university, the community, the state. Let's together build that shade tree that will be the beacon and provide the shade for generations of Minnesotans to come. Thank you very much. We have time for a couple questions? If I haven't worn you out, we have time for a couple questions. Looks like I have worn you out. Okay. Oh, there you go, Jenny. There you go.
How has your involvement in daily operations evolved as you've grown?
You know, I think that Jim and I both share a philosophy that while it does become important that our involvement is more strategic, I think one of the really important things is keeping a touch with every part of the organization. You know, Jim and I, in forming this new company, our commitment was to get to every office in the first 6 weeks. So we're on number 15, but that idea of getting to that kind of touch and for people to understand that they do the real work and that we really want to be transparent and understand what's on their mind, I think is key.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sitting here with a group of student leaders, and I heard you talk about your experience in student government, ACC back then. Can you talk a little bit about what did you learn here in your student experiences that helped you now in your career?
Great question. I think part of it is stretching beyond the minimum of what's expected to you, or expected of you. I think the fact that we took on so many issues that were new for our ACC instilled in me in an early age not only the opportunities but the stewardship of leadership. And I also think that you know as we took on a lot of those issues, it was unfortunately, it was also a look into what can be the apathy of the world. And there were a number of students who were saying, why are we taking on these issues. What do we care? We're really here to get a 4-year education and get out. So whether it's at a college campus or in the world, there's unfortunately a fair amount of apathy, but that's the job of leaders, is to stir that.
Hi. With so many mergers, how do you integrate the different cultures of the companies into your overall culture? And what is your culture?
So I'll start with what I believe our culture is and what we work very hard to build. So it's 1/3 startup, 1/3 design, architectural, creative industry. And then there's another firm in the industry called IDEO, and they do a lot of product design, their process. So it's having this capability outside of just traditional design and architecture to really solve people's problems. The classic IDEO solution is they designed a new grocery cart. So when you go into the grocery store, the grips that are on the front of the cart, the way that the wheels are 360, they took the problem of grocery shopping and they applied it to the cart as opposed to just mass producing carts. So we want to be innovators, we want to be creatives, and we never want to become a bureaucracy. On the merger side, honestly, those mergers kind of split into two. One, the early mergers were very opportunistic, where we knew we needed to be in a place, and short of those people being immoral or unfair, we held our nose on a lot of things where we were not culturally aligned. In the last 10 to 12 mergers, every one of those mergers starts with, are we culturally similar enough? And the courage of leadership and good business policy, I think, is, even though those targets from a strategic standpoint might look great, if the culture doesn't work, it'll never work. And we may be coming up on the last question.
So my question is, there's been an expansion of business, clearly, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And expertise. But we also see that we live in a world today where there's been a lot of abuse of power. So how do you continue to groom and grow employees and leaders who not only have the expertise to bring in the wealth, but also have the moral character to lead in a way that people who are within your organization can fulfill their own dreams and aspirations?
That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, I'm kidding. Probably best question of the day. There was a lot in there. Let me talk about a couple of things. Number one, as a leader, I think it is incredibly important to be committed to transparency. Nobody has to go through anybody to get to Gemini. I recently went to one of our locations that has had some integration troubles, and I sat there with nobody from my executive team for 2 hours while 150 people peppered me on the problems and what I'm going to do about it. There is a responsibility for leaders to be transparent and to be vulnerable. And I think that's what people believe, is when you're transparent and vulnerable, there's no agenda. And you're open to the things that you're not doing a great job at. And by the way, you ask for help on the things that you're not doing a great job at. You make everybody part of the solution. I'd say from the morality, the treatment toward other teammates, there is a zero tolerance. In an industry, by the way, that's, creatives, part of the way that creatives act is they can be bad behavior. There can be a lot of bad behavior. There can be a lot of tearing other people down. There's a zero tolerance for it. And that, again, is the test of leadership. If you say there's a zero tolerance and the star quarterback does something that you said is not acceptable, you either bench him or you lose your credibility. And sometimes that means you lose the game, but I think you win the season or you win subsequent seasons because you do that. I hope that answered your question. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ozzie. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing your inspiration and your passion. You can see why we are so excited that he's also going to spend a little bit of his time increasingly at the University of St. Thomas and helping us with our College of Arts and Sciences Advisory Board. Thank you all for coming. April 6th, we will have our final First Friday. Penny Wheeler will be our speaker on the healing of health. Tonight, our top 10 women's basketball team opens up the first round of the NCAA tournament, where we will beat Chapman University tonight. And tomorrow night, we will have the opportunity to beat the winner of the University of Chicago and Wisconsin Luther game. So hope to see you there. Have a wonderful weekend, and there are parking vouchers on the way out. Thank you.